Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe. Today we're looking at my Chiang Chrisna sweet girl. I've had this orchid for at least 4 years, 3 to 4 years, not too long, but it has always been a really reliable bloomer. And below you can see the parentage, and later in the video I'm also going to get into a little bit more about its parents and the backgrounds of its parents. For the longest time, every single bloom video of this orchid, I've always only shown you the name at the bottom of the video, but for a few days I was bored and I decided to study up on this orchid, and then the more I studied, the more I researched about this orchid, the more I realized how amazing this orchid is in terms of parentage. Essentially, I'm just gonna say it now, essentially it has 6 different species, 3 coming from the pot parent or the mother, and 3 different species coming from its father, so the pollen parent. So we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But overall, this orchid, number 1, has fragrance. It's not super strong, but it has a little bit of that mint, sweet fragrance, which I find really special. And then just the color distribution overall, you have the yellow edge with white center, and then at the back, on the back of each flower, when they're young, there is that green tip, a hint of green. So I find this orchid to be really, really refreshing, quote unquote refreshing. Okay, so as you know, when it comes to parentage labeling, usually you start with the pot parent, so that would be the mother, times the pollen parent, so that would be the father. So mother first, and then father later. I think that's correct. If I'm not correct, be sure to correct me in the comments below. So when it comes to the mother for this orchid, Timothy Christopher, it's an white orchid, and that explains why this orchid would have that white in the center. But then if you look at Timothy Christopher's mother, which is a cross between Equestris and Stortiana, by the way, this combo is called Phalaenopsis Cassandra, right? And then times Aphrodite. So the entire flower of Timothy Christopher is white. And then the father or the pollen parent is the Yonghe Gelb Canary, right? It's 25% Amboinensis plus Mycolizii times Violacea, 25% plus Amboinensis. So essentially it's 50% Amboinensis plus Violacea plus Mycolizii. So yeah, there you go. 6 different species making today's video character. Sweet girl. I've never been fussy about whether an orchid has a name tag or a name. I have enough no IDs. I don't really care, really. But the benefit of knowing the parents of an orchid is that you can do more research to really understand how these parents should be taken care of, which then in turns help you understand how you can take care of the orchids you have. So that's really the biggest benefit. Other than that, to me, as long as an orchid can bloom, it's a good performer. As long as they can perform in terms of blooming, it has a space, it has a place in my collection. So for those of you who are very particular about orchid ID, there you go. This is something for you. But if you have orchids that you really simply don't know the names of, really don't worry. And as long as they bloom for you, why would you care? That means, you're doing something right, and the orchid is happy and it's blooming. So why do you need to worry about not knowing the name of your orchid, right? Because I still have a lot of subscribers asking me to identify for their orchids. How would I know? Like, if they are grocery store phals that don't come with an ID, gosh, it's almost impossible. I mean, you can look at pictures online to find similar, orchids. And then if they happen to have a name, then you can kind of guess that that might be the name for your orchid. But other than that, like, I don't know everything. There's so many orchid crosses out there. It's impossible a grocery store Phalaenopsis orchid and be able to just say, oh, it's the name of this orchid is XYZ. It's impossible. So I just really want to emphasize, I don't know why people sometimes care too much about the IDs. It's great to know for the benefit of what I just said. Knowing the parents, you would know more details if you do the research so that you know how to better care of the orchid you have. Other than that, if they already bloom for you, don't worry about the name. Okay, so back to this orchid. This time around, it's giving me 7 bloom, which is the best that it has ever done. And I have learned that every time these flowers are done, I should cut off the flower spike, even though this one is a sequential bloomer. And because it's a sequential bloomer, that's why I learned for the elongation portion of the flower spike, it would always get skinnier and the flower count will be fewer. And I can tell you the flower sometimes come out with a little bit of deformation. It gets a little wrinkly, a little, has that flare along the edge of the flowers, and I just don't like that. I much rather that they start afresh with a new spike, with new buds, that will give me proper orchid flower shape. So that's what I have learned about this orchid, so I always cut the flower spike off after the bloom. Yes, and yes, some of you may argue it was because I did not provide correct or enough nutrients for this orchid to have more buds during its rebloom on the elongation portion of the spike. That's possible, but because almost all my orchids receive 25% concentration of fertilizer, so I prefer to also give this orchid just that to make my own life easier. Because you know what? I own them. They don't own me, okay? This is a hobby. It's supposed to be something that help me enjoy something in life and help me decompress, and not something that would give me stress or burden. Okay, so overall, this orchid is really, really rewarding every time it blooms. The color combination as well as the scent gives me a quote-unquote refreshing feeling all the time. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!